Hello and welcome to a very NASCAR heavy This Week in Racing. You're either going to love that or you're going to hate that. Regardless, we've got some big things to talk about, including the champ, Floyd Money Mayweather, getting involved in NASCAR. Yes, I can't believe I'm talking about this, but this is current year and this is the story. So let's get into This Week in Racing. But we begin with IMSA news. Jan Magnussen has announced that he will be leaving Corvette Racing as a driver. He's been one of the stalwarts at that team and one of the most popular and famous drivers on the team over the last few years. His vacancy in the seat looks like it's going to go to Jordan Taylor, who has been rumored for quite a long time to be moving away from his family team, which runs a Cadillac DPI, into the brand new C8R Corvette, which I need to make a quick correction about when I was talking about it last week. It is not a turbocharged car, but a flat plane V8. Roger Penske was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom today. It is the highest civilian honor possible, and it is the third time that Penske has been honored at the White House this year. The other two times were for the NASCAR Championship as well as the Indianapolis 500 win of Simon Pagenaud. Micheal Canon is joining Ganassi Racing. He will engineer car number 9 for Scott Dixon, replacing Chris Simmons at that position. Now, of course, Micheal Canon really made a lot of headlines last season, working for Santino Ferrucci over at Dale Coyne Racing, and obviously that's a pretty major loss to that team and driver that seemed to be starting to punch well above their weight, especially kind of coming down the stretch. And now Micheal Canon kind of joining the dark side, as it were, with Scott Dixon. That could be an incredibly potent combination that could win an awful lot of races next season. And now we get into one of the big stories. Floyd Money Mayweather looks like he's joining NASCAR with a brand new team. It was reported not only by Adam Stern, but also by, believe it or not, NASCAR on Reddit, that Mayweather looks to be one of the principals behind the Money Team, which is car number 50. It appears to be a Chevrolet Camaro, and they are projecting that the team will debut at the final NASCAR race of the season at Homestead Miami. Now, there's there's many questions with this, let's be honest. Whether or not this is a totally new team or whether it's going to be one that is affiliated with another is probably the principal question on many people's minds. And so let's talk a little bit about this. We'll obviously talk about the Floyd Mayweather comparison involvement, I guess I should say, because there are some comparisons to be made, especially with, as Brock Beard kind of pointed out on Twitter, that there are a lot of 90s NASCAR teams that kind of paired up with celebrities, and they didn't exactly pan out very well. So I think the seriousness of this program, whether or not it happens, is going to, I believe, be really determined on who they decide to go get for a driver. If they go get J.J. Yaley, I think you're immediately smelling, okay, this is a backmarker team. And that's nothing against J.J. Yaley in particular, but the guy hasn't been super competitive at a cup level since like 2006. So he's not really a guy that you would expect, someone like Floyd Mayweather would be going out and thinking the Money Team is actually going to win a race or at least be competitive or even attempting to be competitive. I've seen some other people kind of making this comparison, and I think it's a pretty well thought out theory that this is going to be a backmarker team, and it's probably going to be affiliated with some of those teams that are running towards the back. Because it's a Chevrolet, immediately things like GMS or Rick Ware Racing come to mind that could affiliate with this team. It does kind of seem like, and it's weird that Floyd Mayweather, I know he's into cars. I don't know too much about boxing, so I apologize in advance if some of this is kind of uneducated. But I know in his personal life, Mayweather is has an affinity for cars. I mean, obviously, he made an ungodly amount of money, or he makes an ungodly amount of money every time he fights, because it becomes such a huge deal. I remember the Manny Pacquiao fight a couple of years ago, and then obviously the one against Conor McGregor a couple of, I think it was almost 2 years ago now. I mean, the guy's a great businessman. He makes a ton of money, and so he buys like Bugattis and stuff like that. But I didn't know he had a super huge interest in auto racing, and particularly NASCAR. So if he is serious about this, he's definitely got the cash to spend to make this a worthwhile endeavor. I just kind of feel like it's going to be, like, oh, well, Dan Marino is a part owner in the First Plus team. Oh, yeah, Dan Marino doesn't really show up to the races. Or Joe Montana is a part of Chip Ganassi Racing. He doesn't really do anything. Jim Harbaugh is a part of Pagan Racing. I'm starting to do IndyCar comparisons, but you get my drift. Oftentimes, these celebrities will, somehow get lured into some sort of a business arrangement with some guys who just want to get into NASCAR, and they say, hey, maybe this is an idea we can get. If we pay Floyd to endorse this car, we can get sponsorship and endorsements through Floyd, or just having his time, flying Floyd into a race, and then schmoozing the sponsors in the hospitality tent. I guess that would be the strategy here. I don't know if, because I would imagine Floyd Mayweather, you don't get to become a huge boxing champion if you're not a competitive person. So if he has an actual true stake in this team rather than just kind of being a figurehead to try to attract sponsors, I would suspect that they're probably going to take it pretty seriously. But if they're not, they're probably just some sort of a thing like Spire Motorsports. And again, they have a win this year, so I don't want to take too much away from them. But they're, a team that's probably going to want to take a charter spot and rake in some of the dough from just, participating in the race, and hopefully passing some of the higher up cup teams that run into each other and crash. But then again, I do know a little bit about Floyd Mayweather's boxing, and if I guess Floyd Mayweather is the type of boxer, if you're to make a NASCAR comparison, at Talladega, Floyd would be the guy who sits in the back of the field and waits for the end of the race, rather than going for a knockout punch very early on and maybe causing a big wreck and or getting knocked out in the third round. Rather, Mayweather waits for the big wreck and then passes everybody and wins at the end. I don't know. Maybe that's a strategy in NASCAR. We'll have to wait and see. And finally, NASCAR and hybrids. We kind of knew this was coming, but let's talk about it. So Bob Pockrass reports that by 2022, NASCAR will have some sort of an electrification component. This is similar to what we've been talking about with IndyCar and IMSA, adding a hybrid system of some sort to the cars. But the thing that Pockrass reported is it looks like that this will be a push-to-pass system. This will be how this will be implemented into NASCAR stock car racing. And the reason for this is pretty simple. Just like many other racing series, this is being pushed for by the manufacturers. So, push to pass in NASCAR. This is kind of funny because anytime I kind of rag on the gimmicks in NASCAR, people come at me, even though it's unprompted, with their big brains and all, and say, well, David, you can't complain about gimmicks in NASCAR because IndyCar has to push to pass, even though I'm not talking about IndyCar racing when I'm talking about NASCAR. And now the one gimmick that even most people, I don't know if there's many people even within the IndyCar sphere that really want to defend push to pass. I know I certainly don't. I would want to get rid of it tomorrow if I was put in charge of it. So I don't think there's many fans of it even in series that it's in. You move to NASCAR, and this is the thing that, because it's like the one gimmick that they don't have now. I mean, you've got mandatory cautions, you've got all of this stuff that has come in the last couple of years, and push to pass was really the thing that they've stayed away from. And it appears to me, this is just me looking at it from the outside, it almost seems like this is an attempt at a solution to a problem that they've created themselves. Let me explain. Well, it's pretty easy to explain, actually. Essentially, what they're turning NASCAR into, whether you want to believe it or not, or whether you agree with what I'm saying or not, it seems like they're turning NASCAR into IndyCar with fenders. high downforce, relatively low horsepower cars, and you start to look at that and think that sounds very similar to what IndyCar is running right now. IndyCars obviously produce a tremendous amount of downforce because they're, of course, open-wheel cars, and they're literally designed as reverse airplane wings. And their engines, especially on the ovals, I think they produce well under 600 horsepower. And really, they only produce above 600 horsepower when they're in qualifying boost. Now, on the road courses, this is a different story. But Indy cars and NASCAR are going to look very similar, at least in terms of the power to downforce ratio going forward. I was just talking about a couple of weeks ago about the new car. They've got a friggin' diffuser on it now. So this is obviously where they've decided to go. And this solution to their racing problem, or yes, they want to create better racing. If you just look at IndyCar racing, you will see that, generally speaking, the direction that IndyCar is at right now with their oval racing, I don't think it's the best it's ever been. I think many people would admit that or talk about that, especially on the NASCAR side. You always hear it in the Indy 500. Oh, well, they can't pass, or, X, Y, Z. This is the direction NASCAR is now going. And so if they bring in a push to pass, it's almost admitting defeat already. It's like, okay, well, we can't get these cars to organically pass each other. To appease the manufacturers, let's add this electrification component, and then hopefully the push to pass that would be generated from a curve system that would be regenerated either under braking or I guess under yellow or going into the pits. It's kind of unclear how you would be able to do regeneration on an oval. I know we've talked about that quite a bit when talking about Indy cars and hybrids. Maybe you would get every restart you get one push or a couple of pushes, and then your battery's pretty much toast until you have an opportunity to regenerate it. And with the way stage racing is now, almost certainly it's going to be when a yellow comes out or when they bring out that stage caution, when the cars will actually stop being full throttle going all the way around the track. And it's just disappointing because I think the fans have spoken so clearly recently that they want this to be low downforce racing. They want big horsepower, low downforce. And you can add electrification elements and make it a race car much higher horsepower. And if I'm in the NASCAR boardroom, that's how I market this, is that, hey, these cars are going to be a lot more higher powered, and this is a stock element or something that is similar to what the road cars are. So you get, if you're marketing this, I think it's a pretty easy sell. The way they're doing it, again, is like the exact wrong way to do it, of course, because it's like, okay, well, our cars, our package that we have created specifically to try to make the racing better has not made the racing better. Therefore, hardcore fans, we're going to add a hybrid option, but rather than market it the proper way, we're just going to say, hey, this is another gimmick, it's push to pass, please like us. And I get it, the TV ratings have gone up. Ironically enough, I want to say this because recently I got in the mail some information that my household could become a Nielsen household. But the hoops they make you jump through to actually be counted in the TV ratings are so asinine that I honestly question the data that they're gathering from these television ratings. I question them, to be honest with you. I'm not saying that NASCAR doesn't have still the largest fan base in terms of auto racing in the country, but the 20% jump in ratings for that Kansas race kind of made me kind of think a little bit, because was it due to that flip that Brendan Gaughan had at the end of Talladega? Was it because Chase Elliott was in danger of being knocked out of the playoffs? There were a lot of questions there. What was it, just because of the racing, or has stage racing really been the thing that has, saved the ratings or brought them back up? I would say probably not. But to get back to the point, I'm not opposed to hybrids. I never really have been. It may end up, it is probably the future, so we probably better get used to it. There's a way NASCAR could implement this that appeals to fans. It doesn't look like they're going to do that. So just get ready for 2022 when there's a push-to-pass element added to NASCAR. So thank you guys so much for watching This Week in Racing. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below about anything I've talked about or anything I may have missed. It's always good to have discussion about everything motorsport. And if you've got something that's important you think needs to be talked about, the comment section is where you need to go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more motorsports content. This has been David Land on YouTube, and I will see you in the next video.